welcome to the second episode of the Co-op Chat podcast. It's been obviously quite a while. I'm joined again by my co-host Scott Robertson. My name is Jordan Adams. Scott, what has happened over the last month? I think we recorded at the start of September.
We did as well. So basically, I've moved house. I'm in a house now. It's very housey. And I had an operation on my foot at the same time. So, the past few months have been very fun. It gave me a chance to play through this game quite a few times. So that's something. Each time I went through it, it's like, what happens if I forget about this? And just go back through it again.
Yeah, so we've been having difficulties with obviously getting this to work. I've been fine. I've just been waiting for Scott. Obviously he's moving into uni. So get straight into it. So this episode is on Silent Hill 3. Should have mentioned that at the start.
Woohoo!
We're moving on from the second game. It's part of the HD collection that I've played. I don't think. Have you played the HD collection, or was it?
I've played the HD version of it as well, and I do have some things to say about the HD version of it.
So yeah,
because oh boy.
So it was like 6 to 7 years ago. I think I played it or something like that.
Yeah.
I went in blind off the back of the first two. I did play the first one on PlayStation, the PlayStation 3. So I knew what to expect. I enjoyed it. What about you?
Yeah, so my first exposure to this game was the PS2 version.
Yeah.
I picked it up not long after I finished Silent Hill 2 for the first time. Oh, the director's cut Silent Hill 2. So I went into it it's probably about like a year or so after Silent Hill 2 for me. I did play the HD version quite a while afterwards, and I played through both the PS2 version and the HD version for this video just to refresh my mind on the weirdness of the HD edition.
So I was sort of hoping for another contained story, like the second one, but it is a continuation from the first, so I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But it does update from the second one. I think there are slightly better cutscenes or better, slightly updated graphics as well. And I think the voice acting is actually really good in this game. I think the voice actresses and actors did really well in portraying their characters. And I think the horror is well done as well. I think it is a little bit more on the horror side than the second one. I think that's what a lot of people seem to say. So yeah, I had a good first experience as well. So the starts of the game, we're sort of thrown in at the deep end, aren't we? So we're this
very much so.
We're at this protagonist teenage girl who subverts the first two male protagonists from the first two games, and we're in this sort of like we're in the other world, aren't we? We're in the amusement park to start with. We don't know who this person is, and obviously if you've played the first two games, which you probably should have if you're listening to this, you should know that the other world is obviously very dangerous. You start off with, I think it's only a knife. You don't have any guns or ammo, do you?
The amusement park is a little bit different. So, in the dream, it's a dream segment to start off with. You do start out with very little, but there is a point not too far into it where you're given the entire loadout. It's just not conveyed to you because it's so short. You don't realize it. You're generally you're just going to be there with a lead pipe or something like that, going, "Oh, this will do." But I do believe that there's a point in the amusement park section at the start where you have nearly the entire arsenal, which was a bit weird. But it was one of those things where you have to actually, because you start out automatically with the pipe in your hand. It's one of those things where, because the game doesn't convey the menu or the inventory system or anything like that through the dream segment, you're standing there and you think, okay, this is what I got. Well, in retrospect, if you get about, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes into that segment, you load up your inventory. It's got like the katana and all this sort of stuff, and it's like, oh shit, okay.
And so at the stage, at least in the HD collection, I have like no motive to kill anything. The only thing I'm thinking at the time is basically just to survive. and make it to the end. And then when you do get to the end, you get to a cutscene, don't you, of yourself getting absolutely wiped out by one of the amusement rides.
It's quite fun actually, because there were when I think back to video games during this period of time, there's this weird spike around the PS2 era where there were tutorials which you could fail and you could still continue on and be just fine with. And they stopped those now. Obviously, if they're going to throw a tutorial in your face, you have to do the tedious task of nailing what the game's telling you to do. But Silent Hill 3 didn't do that. No. Silent Hill 3 has this really cool philosophy which it introduces right at the start of the game, which is unlike Silent Hill 1 and 2, where in Silent Hill 1 and 2, yes, you can evade the enemies, you can run around them, that is a possibility, but it does encourage you to wipe out areas because you backtrack quite a bit in those games. If, say, like in Silent Hill 2, for example, when you go out into the wider Silent Hill town itself, there are moments where you might want to explore Silent Hill itself because the town might have shifted and you want to get some pickups, so it is heavily encouraged that you clear enemies along the way to make it easier for yourself when you go back to look for those items. Silent Hill 3 doesn't have that motive, only because right at the start, it's like it introduces you to one new enemy, and the second you go into like the new room, there's like 5 alternative enemies in there. The idea is panic. It wants you to run. It wants you to go, look, you can take these on, and sure, if you wanted to go back here, it'll make things easier, but that's not your priority here. Your priority is to fucking run, and I love it. It's that perfect medium ground of, say, like a game like Outlast, for example. I liked Outlast when it came out, but I don't agree with its not that I don't agree with its gameplay style, but I'm not a fan of it. The idea of running away and having no defense sort of writes the game for itself. You know, it's one of these things where I like the opportunity to take alternate routes. I like the opportunity to go, okay, I can take this guy out, but it's going to be at the cost of, you know, like you're taking a risk doing so. And the previous Silent Hill games haven't done that too much. This is the first one where I think that the word survival horror fits it perfectly. You've got that option to either take on all the monsters, and it's a possibility you can do that, but at the same time, you're going to find your life a hell of a lot easier just pegging it through this game.
And so we take it from there. This person, she wakes up in sort of like a diner, and then obviously you realise it was a nightmare. You were in the other world. No explanation to it whatsoever. And then here on out, the game essentially ensues, and then you take it from there. So other than the obviously what you're feeling there, obviously to survive, what else are you sort of feeling and thinking here in this scene when she wakes up and then going throughout the rest of the game?
You know what? This was probably the creepiest scene in any Silent Hill game for me. Just the diner scene, the second she gets up, because it's the first time in a Silent Hill game. 4 sort of emits these feelings a little bit at one point as well, but it's the first time in a Silent Hill game where you're in a public place. You know, there may not necessarily be that many people there, but you can hear the crowds. You can tell that this is a lived-in place. The tone, the color, it feels very much like it's like a sunset feeling. You know, you feel like the night hasn't dropped just yet. We're being lowered into hell rather than being dropped in like the other games. So it feels like, I don't know, like it did such a good job at establishing the horror that by the time it lifts it up, it's like the anticipation to a jump scare. You know, you're there going, no, this feels worse because I'm waiting for something bad to happen. I'm waiting for something really, really dark to happen.
I feel,
and then we get
I feel very isolated for the most of this game. The mall where you start with is massive, isn't it? It's very massive.
Giant. It's the biggest section in the entire game, I think.
It's massive. It's very echoey. You feel like your footsteps ping off walls, and then enemies can hear you almost. The subway station feels empty and abandoned. The characters aren't sort of connected to the main protagonist in any way, except for her dad, obviously, who you find out early on through the first cutscene, and you also don't get sort of like a companion of sorts like you do with Maria at the second game. So that's why I feel very isolated.
Maria and Sybil Bennett.
Yeah.
Those two were like your grounding, like your anchor. And really, the closest thing we have to that game is in this one is Douglas, but he appears for like so little.
Yeah.
And when you realise why he's in the game in the first place, I don't know. I don't mind his character. I do think that he's one of the lesser dudes in the entire story. He's just sort of like, hey, I've got some questions I need to ask you, and then immediately like. The next time we properly hear like any progression in terms of his character, it's like, oh, okay, so that's why you were doing this. I don't know why you did this. I feel like that you could have like you could have picked any other character, and they could have done the same job as him and made it a little bit eerier.
And
like,
so,
but we'll get into those characters later on.
Yeah. You obviously travel into the town with him, but you do get separated early on. I'm pretty sure you have to go your separate paths to do different tasks almost. So, yeah, this isolation sort of grabs you and makes you feel very sort of like on your own throughout the most of the game instead of like the second and the first games. So, going back to the question, I'm sort of thinking about progressing and sort of getting the hell out of these places. I don't like being in the mall for too long since it's so open and dangerous. There's a lot of enemies around. And in the back of...
It does a good job at making you linger at that starting segment. It's sort of like the I can't think of an area in the game that is like as large as the mall, but it's one of those things where it's like it puts you in an uncomfortable situation from the get-go, even before you're in the other world. And then when you get into the other world and then you run into the abandoned mall, this is very, like, it sort of holds you for too long. Yeah. It's like having, I don't know, someone breathing on your neck, and then you think, okay, they only did it once, that's it, but it just keeps going and going and going and going, and you're just like, nah, I want to go, I want to leave. So it works. I think this game is the best for paranoia. Yeah, it really freaks you out. In fact, I've got a really fun story to tell about paranoia when it comes to this game, and it occurs in the section just after the mall. So I'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, I'm sort of like in the back of my mind. I'm thinking, so like, sort of when do we get to Silent Hill itself? You're for like so much of the game, like the first, I don't know, if like the half of the game, I guess it's sort of split into two. You're not in Silent Hill. Yeah, it's building up towards it, and obviously I want to know more and more about the protagonist, who we'll get onto soon, and what will end up happening at the end when she gets to Silent Hill. So there's lots of questions. We'll move on to the plot. So the main protagonist is obviously, you play as Heather. She's a teenager who's running an errand at the mall for her dad. She falls asleep in the restaurant, or the diner, like we say, and wakes up after the nightmare, the first scene that you're in. And then she runs into the detective called Douglas, who actually wants to speak to her about her birth. From there, she encounters a number of monsters which she has to kill to survive. And then we get through them all, and then you meet a weird woman called Claudia.
Her name is like not even subtle as well. That's what gets me. If you played Silent Hill 1, it's not subtle whatsoever.
It's so, like, as soon as you see her, you immediately think, oh, the cult. That's exactly what she's there for. She's so, like, weird and unorthodox, and she talks very slowly and very purposefully, I'd say. And you're just so confused at, like, why is she here? And how did she even get here? How does she know we're here? How does Douglas know we're here as well? It's so confusing. And then we obviously find out she's a member of the Order, I think it's called, which is the cult from the first game. Obviously a religious cult. And Claudia pretty much tells Heather that her talents are required. I think she says, remember me and your true self as well. She also says that she will lead them to paradise with bloodstained hands. So some very cryptic wording here, but it's in line with the first game, isn't it?
Yeah. Silent Hill 3's story did something very interesting that I don't think I've seen done before in a game up until that point when I played it, where the entire point of the third game, whilst it does have its own narrative going on, is basically just to make sense out of the cryptic shit that happens in the first game.
Yeah.
Because if you remember the first game, you have the bulk of the story is trying to find your daughter, and then it's only really in like the last like hour or so, I want to say, when you start getting like these hallucinations and these visions of Alyssa and everything that's happening in the hospital and stuff like that. You're like, it's very heavy-handed with its plot at the end of the game. So whilst it does make enough sense to carry the ending of Silent Hill 1 home, it's kind of weird to have an entire game where it just goes, hey, so you know the last hour of the first game? Yeah, so essentially we're just going to be giving you the Silent Hill wiki on that for the next like 4 to 6 hours. It's like, oh, okay, that's cool, I guess. It does work though. It's really weird. It's sort of like these characters that you really didn't give a shit about in these visions that were just there for no reason, and then they all show up at the end. And it's like, hey, I met you in one scene. I don't know why you're here. I don't know who you are. I don't even know what this cult is. And then Silent Hill 3 just contextualizes everything. It's like, oh, so that's who that guy was. That's why this cult is a thing. That's what's going on here. Vincent's a thing. I don't know why he's a thing, but he's a thing. And it all like accumulates into like an ending. This game was made to have a better ending to Silent Hill 1, I feel. And it succeeds in that, but also succeeds in having a story. If you think about the protagonists of Silent Hill 1 and 2, they were very much your everyman character. They were your point of view characters. They didn't have too much of a personality because they were there to get us involved into it. Whereas Heather was really her own character, so having a personal story for once. And yes, I know about Silent Hill 2. I know that was all about that stuff, but really in Silent Hill 2 you're probably spending more time focusing on the other characters you met along the way rather than James's story himself. This was the first time where I felt like a Silent Hill game was a personalized story, which is why it wasn't... The horror was a different breed of horror for Silent Hill 3, and I like that quite a bit.
And so from there you make your way through the game. You get to a scene where Heather finds her dad murdered in the apartment, and Scott, guess who?
It's so abrupt.
Guess who? It's only Harry Mason from the first Silent Hill. What a shocker!
It's so abrupt, though.
It's obviously it's revealed that Claudia ordered the murder. It's pretty obvious. Since Harry, obviously in the first game, he ruined the cult's plans by taking away the baby, who obviously turns out to be Heather, and that's why she's linked to Silent Hill, and that's why she has to go back. So after defeating the boss, can't remember his name, but you go with Douglas. You move your dad to the bedroom. You cover his body with the sheets, and you pay your final respects. And then Heather, from there, she's angered. Obviously, she vows to get revenge on Claudia, and goes with Douglas to Silent Hill to do so. So from there, you do meet other characters, and you obviously get your revenge on Claudia, essentially. So, what are your thoughts on the plot, like, overall?
I like it quite a bit. The plot and the gameplay sort of fit each other quite well, in the sense that this isn't the same type of Silent Hill game as was in the previous games. Silent Hill 1 was made to have sort of like this interactive horror experience around a haunted town of sorts. Silent Hill 2 was to try and twist and turn that into a deep, meaningful story, whilst keeping the idea of the town alive. Silent Hill 3's main goal is to tell a story first and foremost, with its gameplay matching its beats as much as possible. So it's a very linear progression. If you actually have a look at the way Silent Hill 3 moves, there's really not a lot of backtracking whatsoever. No. The bulk of it is almost like a straight line. You are travelling from A to B throughout the entire game, and that even includes the Silent Hill segments. But you know, I'll talk about that in a bit anyway. But in terms of the plot itself, really, I don't know what it is about this one in particular. Like, my mind keeps going, Silent Hill 2 has a plot that makes me think more. I can spend a lot more time analysing and deep diving on Silent Hill's 2 plot.
Yeah.
Silent Hill 3 is more straightforward, but there's something just so fascinating about learning, like, the history behind Alyssa, about who she was, about Heather's connection to her, about the way the Order works. Like, in the first game, it was very cut and dry, you know. Towards the end, the Order were just, they are evil pricks that are led by a witch lady of sorts who wasn't really a witch. It was kind of obscure. Whereas this time around, you have a look at all these characters and you think, oh, you know, the Order, it's a cult. Obviously, these people are all evil. And then the character which I mentioned prior, Vincent, you meet him, and then the lines really start to blur. You think, okay, maybe it is just a religious thing. Maybe these people are all worshipping these gods, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they agree with them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they like believe in the same thing. So it's like, you know, the way we have religion, you know, Christianity, you know, bits and bobs like that, you know, different variations of the same religion just spread throughout the entire thing. And it added a lot more depth without like making me go, I could write a 40-page article on how, I don't know, on why Heather wears a vest. No, not a vest, but that weird like puffer coat jacket throughout the entire thing. Like there's no subtext to this game, and it doesn't harm it, which I don't know. I feel like that I could talk more about why this game freaks me out with how much I love its plot in comparison to Silent Hill 2, which I do love Silent Hill 2's plot, but it's sort of like Silent Hill 2 lacks the basic through line with its plot, but it doesn't need it because all of the deep meanings behind that game carry the story and ascend it even. Whereas Silent Hill 3 almost does the opposite. It doesn't need a subtext to it because its actual transparent in front of you plot is more than enough to bring you from A to B.
You do sort of get that through the monsters though, don't you? You get sort of
like Glutton and the weird,
well, the penis monster.
The more you look into it,
the penis boss, I should say.
My God, you'd think that after Silent Hill 2, like the phallic imagery would end, but then it just kept coming back and back. It's like, this is a young girl.
Team Silent, they love the penises, man.
They do. The stories through the monsters were interesting as well, I suppose, but I guess that's something that we'll talk about in a bit anyway. But yeah.
So we'll get onto the characters. Protagonist, Heather. When creating Heather, the designers gave her a sort of like a natural look, didn't they? Didn't make her look like a sort of like supermodel, I guess. She's only like 17 or something in this game, or 18. I don't know how old she is. I think she's 17.
I think she's meant to be 17.
Yeah. They made her look exhausted and very weary, tired around her eyes, her eye bags, and her facial features. The facial features were instrumental in portraying like a heavy burden, apparently, weighing down on the shoulders. Or the shoulders of a young person. That's what they were trying to do, apparently. That's what I read. But obviously this burden's because her soul, it's very hard to explain, but her soul is essentially split between herself and Alessa from the first game. So Alessa in the first game was used by the cult as a birth god, and then when giving birth to the child, that turned out to be Heather. And then it's very it's not easy to explain, but obviously that cycle is pretty much ongoing throughout this game, but Heather is the sort of incubator. What do you think about Heather as a character?
She's the best protagonist in the franchise, in my opinion. She is fleshed out very early on. In fact, they made sure to give her so much of a personality that she would stand out, and it works. We mentioned the voice acting earlier on, and
Mm-hmm.
the HD version of Silent Hill 3 is um, basically they've replaced all of the voice actors and actresses, and going between Silent Hill 3, the PS2 game, and the HD version is a very weird thing, because the PS2 version still contains that level of the uncanny valley. You're listening to these characters and you're like, oh, there's something weird going on. Like all the cult members a little bit waving about all about the place, especially Vincent. I mean, Jesus Christ, he was a cartoon character in the original one. Whereas the HD version very much tried to ground everything more, Hollywoodized it almost. Yeah. Like Heather had a softer voice, which really threw me off the first time I played it. Listening to her voice with a phone call to her dad, and it's like, whoa.
It's good. It is good.
Like the voice act, I think it's a really weird thing where it's like you do get a slightly different tone depending on which version of the game you play. With that being said, neither of them are bad. They're both of the same level of quality. I feel it depends what you want out of it, really. Preference wise, I really don't have one. I think that the flaws in voice acting carries, unfortunately. Douglas as well. Like I didn't like his voice actor in the first iteration of the game, and the HD version doesn't do too much to sway me either. But everyone does their job remarkably well. But yeah, Heather's definitely the standout of this entire cast for me.
Yeah, I like her. She's relatable. Well, I guess to other teens. Obviously, I played it when I was a teen. I think you must have done as well.
Yeah.
She says some things that which we probably all see in the situation as well. Some very like weird, like not weird remarks, but like something that you may not think about if you're in that situation, I guess. But she's kind of comedic in that sense. She questions a lot of things that which don't make sense. Faces everything head on. She's strong-willed, courageous.
She takes a very She's got a very zero fucks attitude about her, but that goes for the majority of the game, I guess.
Yeah.
She because obviously Silent Hill feeds off of the personality of the people who enter it. It does do that really clever thing where it mixes the ideas of Silent Hill 1 and 2 together almost. Where it's like, yes, you've got this cult-like version of the world from Silent Hill 1, but you still got that purgatory feeling from Silent Hill 2, where it's like their personalities amplified for the other world. And I think that works in spades here, because you think about Heather's character and the sort of, like, I don't give a fuck attitude she has. So the world's almost like, well, fuck. I guess we just need to throw more shit at her, so everything gets more explicit to try and provoke a reaction out of her, and she's still level-headed throughout the entire thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I reckon there's a redeeming characteristics, which I think that's why people may resonate with her more than the other characters in the series. So move on to Douglas now. So Douglas is pretty mysterious, I think you'd say. He's a detective. Well, the detective outfit doesn't help his situation at all, does it? Very shady, but he does open up to Heather throughout. They sort of bond like father and daughter, don't they? Both are sort of anxious about being alone, I think. Douglas was sent by the cult, I think, to bring Heather to them, to Claudia. But he obviously learns of the truth quite quickly when he sees I think it's the other world. I think there's a scene where he's so confused about what's going on, and obviously he finds out what Claudia's...
he's like tripping the fuck out for a second.
Yeah, he finds out what Claudia's her real reasoning, what she wants to do, what her real motive is with Heather. Obviously with the whole birthing God thing. So he obviously wants to aid Heather to stop that. He's quite likable. He stays true to his good nature, and ultimately does the right thing by joining Heather and helping her along the way. He's there as well to serve as a vehicle for Heather to traverse the game. He obviously takes her to Silent Hill as well, but he's there to question her as well. He's there to be a voice of reason against against the sort of like unreasonable cult members like Vincent and Claudia. So without him, I think it would be more bleak and less interesting. And Heather obviously wouldn't have any other reason left to keep going. So, what's your thoughts on Douglas?
Replaying it was interesting because he gave me some real Scott Shelby vibes for some reason. I just kept looking at him going. But as it went on, no, I think he's a nice guy. The voice actors sort of tilt it weirdly for me. I do think that as the game goes on, and it's more of the character that you feel for as it goes on. I really like the idea of this person not like oddly being the first Silent Hill companion of sorts. That's like really just self-aware about the entire thing, where he's just looking around and it's not like it's not like Maria from Silent Hill 2 or the weirdness of Sybil Bennett in Silent Hill 1, who's like, I'm a police officer, I'm just going to go back and forth and occasionally I'll see you, but I'm not really going to question anything, and by the time you tell me what's going on, I'm going to be like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. Instead, it was just like he was experiencing a very similar journey to that of Heather, and it felt almost like it made his character a lot more comforting. I would say that he's more like an uncle figure rather than a father figure. He's sort of like this person who is like just distant enough that she can call like a friend rather than being a bit forceful about the situation. Also, it was just nice to have a character that didn't have a look at a younger character or just the protagonist and go, no, you're tripping the fuck out. We're going to take you to one side, we're going to sit you down, and we're going to have a word with you and stuff like that. It's just like, no, I'm going to enable you. You should investigate this. Also, the first time anyone's driven a car in a Silent Hill game that hasn't crashed, so that's pretty good as well.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean... well, you could say James, but he flipped that shit. Depending on which ending you got, he flipped that shit at the end.
We'll move swiftly on to Claudia Wolf. So, a few words I've wrote here: strange, loopy, crazed. Have you got any more sort of synonyms for her?
Deranged.
Deranged. That's a good one.
High. I don't know if that would pass. She was the most Silent Hill 1 character in the game.
She's obviously brought up by I think was she brought up by who was it in the first game? Dahlia. Was she brought up by Dahlia? Well, she's brought up by the cult anyway. So she's obviously got those beliefs ingrained into her. She's got to always turn like that, I guess. But Vincent's sort of similar. He was also brought up, but so yeah, Claudia. She sort of believes the world is corrupt, and thinks that the solution is to save it is by legitimately birthing God and starting afresh. She refers to it as paradise on so many occasions. Her background is pretty particularly tragic, I'd say. She was screamed at, hit, beat, and kicked on the floor by her father Leonard, who we meet later on, until she'd cry from the pain and accept God and the order as a faith. So that obviously clearly worked because she's obviously fast-tracking the birth of God, or the rebirth of God, by antagonising Heather to return to Silent Hill. So the first time you see her, it's down that long corridor, I think, if you remember, in the mall.
Yeah.
I felt pretty unsettled by this shot. It's a very, very good shot. Immediately you get a sense that there's something off about her. She has no shoes on, for a start. A long black cloak, which reminds you of Dahlia. And she speaks very sinisterly as well. So that shot down the hallway with her is one that I always remember anyway. So I think it's definitely done on purpose. And obviously Team Silent want you to know that this person is weirdly serious and important to the plot as well. So what do you think about Claudia?
The first time I saw her, like, I've always gone into Silent Hill games blind, so the first time I played Silent Hill 3 and I saw Claudia, my mind was like in slight disbelief, because on the one hand I was just creepy, and the other hand I thought, how old must Dahlia be at this point if she's standing right there? And then when it went, oh, I'm Claudia, and it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're Dahlia. You're definitely Dahlia. And the game kept going on. It's like, oh, look, Claudia. We don't. Vincent going, I don't necessarily agree with her ways and all this sort of stuff. It's like, nah, you mean Dahlia. You definitely mean Dahlia.
Dahlia.
I was like tripping towards the end. It's like there has to be something really weird going on. So it's like playing back for the first one. It's like, no, you're Dahlia. Okay, so they are different characters. And then by the time you get to the end, it was like, it didn't even matter. They could have been the same character.
Pretty much.
And it would have made just as much sense. Instead, I'm led to believe that another elderly woman I don't know how... Let's see, 17, but how old must Heather have been at the end of Silent Hill 1? Was she a brand new, fresh-born baby? In which case, Silent Hill 3 takes place 17 years after Silent Hill 1.
Technically she is, because she gets birthed right in front of Harry, and then he just takes her away. I guess so.
So, if we're taking into account that Silent Hill 3 takes place 17 years afterwards, and Claudia looks like an old decrepit woman, a bit like Dahlia, so does that mean that, like, 17 years prior, she decided to have, like, a gap year from the Order, and then she just came back? Because I don't know. It's weird to have such a prominent character not be mentioned before in the franchise, and then she just pops up out of nowhere, and it's like, "Yo, bitch, what's up? I'm the new Dahlia," and it's like, did Dahlia agree to this? I know that she kind of like got nerfed and shit, but
there's one thing
weird that you're just here now.
One thing I have to say, I'm checking the wiki right now. Apparently, she's 29.
What the 29. Fuck?
Look at a picture of her, and then
there is no.
She doesn't look too old.
There is no way.
She's 29. That's what it says.
I must be. I don't know. I'm gone. That's what's happening right now.
The Silent Hill wiki knows all, Scott. This is live scene.
No. There's something wrong. There's something wrong about this shit. Someone's mis. No, come on. Let's get a proper look at this.
29.
Claudia Wolf. Her last name's Wolf because she's the big bad wolf. Oh my god.
20.
Maybe it's because she wore a hood. And then she like took it off. Like she 29. She looks like she could be like in her 30s, like towards the end.
I think because of what she's been through, all the beating and kicking, like I said, she's obviously probably aged a lot more. Maybe in your eyes anyway, but she's obviously aged a lot more in her features and stuff, and she obviously doesn't look great. She's not going
okay. Hang on. I'm breaking out the calculator for this one. 29 take away 17, so she was 12 during the Order. How old was she when she got beaten up?
I don't know. Probably younger, I guess, if it was ingrained into her at an early age. Possibly.
I'm. At what age did Claudia get beaten the fuck up?
Jeez.
She was raised alongside Alyssa. Okay. Nope, doesn't mention it. So I'm going to say that she was like, let's say 6 or 7, just to alleviate it when her dad decided to show her the wooden spoon, and then 12 years later, Harry Mason rolls up, does a Tokyo Drift into Silent Hill, topples the car. And then I don't know, her dad goes, hey, so there's like this thing going down. I don't know. I feel like that if her dad would have beaten God into her, not literally, but I mean, he literally beat her, but not God into her.
Right.
I fucked up that sentence. Anyway, if he were to do that, then surely he would have been like, hey, I want you to see the birth of God as we're doing that. Instead, the dad and Claudia decided to go to, like, Alabama for a year and then just come back.
We'll move on to Vincent before you keep going and digging yourself into this hole.
I need to know about Claudia. What the fuck happened to her between the time she believed in God?
We'll leave Claudia there. She's very,
okay.
We know what Team Silent are like in the first game. You look at some of the characters and you don't believe the ages that they are, because in the first one they're very like, I think is it the nurse that's supposed to be like really young, but then she's not. Well, she doesn't look really young, but she is. Things like that.
Like they Hollywooded her.
Yeah, there's just a thing. There's like an uncanny valley sort of thing. I think it also applies to this game and Claudia. So
yeah,
Vincent, what do you think of Vincent? We'll get your thoughts first. What do you think of Vincent?
He was a trip and a half. First time I played this game and I saw Vincent, I was like, no. We're back in Silent Hill now. We're fine. Yeah. This is cool. He just like goes. I can't describe the way he talks.
No.
He's like that really over exaggerated like young adult film character. It's like I never even wanted to be here. I worship God for Claudia. He's like this really wavy guy. He's almost like I can't. He's like a mixture between Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny in my mind. I don't know why. Like, he's this character who's like, I will kill anyone at a single moment, but I'm going to crack a few jokes, and I'm going to make sure the jokes really last before it happens. I do remember one line in particular from him that stands out, where he looks at Heather and has this small conversation where he goes, "They look like monsters to you?" I thought that was really chilling at the time, and I thought, yeah, we're throwing some Silent Hill 2 wisdoms into there. That's pretty cool. So you have to wonder what Vincent sees, and then that obviously adds to world building onto the order itself. Do they see the monsters as monsters, or do they see them as like other people, lost souls, stuff like that? Which was a really cool concept. I like that idea. But yeah, Vincent was weird. Yeah.
I think whoever's in the cult or grown up to it, they are just like strange immediately. They're clearly not accustomed to real life like Heather is. She's someone who reveals that through her like sort of clear logical thinking, whereas these people aren't really. You don't know if he's an ally or an enemy throughout the game. I think it's left to the imagination and through what he says and through what he tells
sort of wanders off. Like he doesn't. Like, he wanders off with his sentences. He's sort of at one point, he's like, you know, this religion's a real thing. You should, you know, really take this seriously. And then at the same time, he's like, that doesn't mean I agree with what anyone's doing. So it's just a really weird line. It's like a person who believes in God but doesn't believe that, you know, you should slit the throat of lambs to worship him. Like, you know, you should take it. It's sort of like how religion's gone on. In reality, like the practices that people did ages and ages and ages ago is the more strict Catholic ancient approach versus the much more Christian world we live in now. This is coming from an agnostic person, I want to point out, but like the way like how relaxed religion has become now, it's sort of like that. It's like the transformation between the order's view of the religion and then other people that still believe in it but are a bit more relaxed on the rules and stuff.
So yeah,
yeah.
He's somewhat against the rebirthing of God, but his motivations are left sort of unclear because he dies to Claudia at the end, as we find out. He's very, very mysterious, but he's somewhat sane, I guess. He's not as bad as Claudia. Doesn't tell Heather the information she needs, so he can be pretty manipulative as well, teasing, and I think a massive knobhead.
Like he's sort of like he doesn't want God to be rebirthed, but at the same time he doesn't want to dismiss the religion. He doesn't want to dismiss the practices and stuff like that. So it sort of fills in the gaps of like why he's being a bit mysterious. It's sort of like, I don't want to deny my like the thing that I've worshipped my entire life, but at the same time I really don't disagree with the way these people are approaching things. But yeah, he is by far the most, in my opinion, he's the most fucked up character in the entire game, just on the basis that you can't tell like who the fuck he's playing for, you know?
Yeah. We'll move on to the soundtrack quickly. We're about 40 odd minutes in. sound and soundtrack. I think it's the ambient sound, what you hear around you. It's so surreal. The mall, the ambient sound there is creepy as hell. It's chilling. Um, there are echoes of some sort of like beast awaiting you deep within, luring you in, and then you do find
Yeah.
out it's one of the bosses. So the sound fills in the cracks. It makes you sort of think there's something there when sometimes there may not be something there. So you're always left guessing. Um, there's a sort of similar feeling when you're entering the subway station as well. I think you're reminded of an American Werewolf in London, because there's a series.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison.
There's a series of like echoing growls you hear as soon as you enter, and that's very similar to the film. What you hear in that film. I actually went to check each scene, and I think they may have borrowed from that film because it came out. I think it was like the 80s or something like that. So yeah, they did both the film and the game use this sound, this ambient sound, to sort of build suspense. I think in the film, in the cutscene when you're in the subway, you hear the creature first, and then you only get a glimpse of it at the end as well when you see it just creeping onto the camera, onto your screen. I think it's done there, and I think it's done here as well. And I think Tame Silent sort of allowed us to use our imaginations to scare us, and also it's something that Hitchcock used similarly in his films as well. I think use sound to build suspense.
I can remember a moment quite clearly. Something that I was bringing up in terms of scares before that occurs primarily through sound. I remember sitting down in my room playing this game when I was younger, and I had the volume all the way up, and I can't remember where it was. It was on a staircase in one of the scenes, and just for no apparent reason, there was a knock on the door, but it was so realistic. I shat myself. Because it sounded like it was coming from my door. It was like stereo, so it was coming from the left. And I was like, what the fuck? But it's like small moments like that really creeped me out. The sound design is excellent in this game, definitely.
Soundtrack. What do you think about that? Soundtrack. What do you think?
I know that some people like fairly mixed on the theme. I love it. I think that this is the best theme out of any Silent Hill game because it encapsulates it encapsulates what this game is. It's like you've got this rock pop song in the background whilst all of these dentist tools are being used to emphasize the rock. It's this really like weird. It's almost like saying the word Uncanny Valley and turning it into a song. Like there's something that feels really good about it, but at the same time, there's something just unnerving enough that makes you go, "Ugh."
Yeah.
But yeah, I really love the soundtrack in this game.
My favorite, I think, track is called "End of Small Sanctuary." It's actually my my morning alarm. I love it so much. It plays when you're in the mall, when Heather wakes up. I think it's probably as soon as she wakes up. I can't remember, but you hear it quite clearly
I think it is.
when you meet Douglas for the first time. So it's soothing, but in a game so horrific. It's sort of like not a subversion, but like a weird parallel, I guess. But
it's that weirdness from what I said about the scene and that exact scene beforehand, where it's so calm and chill that it's actually scaring you more than it should.
It is sort of similar to Resident Evil though, and their sort of save room music.
Safe room.
Yeah. But yeah, there's another one called Never Forgive Me, Never Forget Me, which is pretty spooky, I think. It plays after Heather defeats the missionary boss, the one after discovering her dead dad. A scary as hell song as well called Prayer plays when Heather fights the memory of a lesser boss. It's sort of like, it sounds like Mongolian throat singing, which is very strange, but it fits in well. Yeah, it's very unique. You wouldn't hear it in any other game, I think, really.
They tried to replicate it once in Siren Blood Curse.
Right.
But it sort of turned into its own thing.
And what about we'll move on to the gameplay. So, what about the game? What good things and what bad things do you think the gameplay is? Very weird question.
It's so. I think this is going to be something that's down to preference as well, because I think that this this game overall it's probably like one of the most polished Silent Hill games. I mean, you go no further than strafing. For instance, if you're going to lock onto an enemy in the previous games, you would hold still, and then you would like slowly walk around them, charge up your attack, and then do that. Now in this game, your strafing is just as fast as you're running and walking. It's as fast as you want it to be, which makes snapping between strafing and running really fast, which is especially great when this is a game that I mentioned before emphasizes both running and fighting. You can take either path and you can get just as far in the game. It puts just as much emphasis on either side. So having the ability to go, okay, I'm going to try and take out a few enemies here and there just to make the trip back, if I wanted to make a trip back easier. But it allowed you to sort of dodge around oncoming threats a lot easier. Weapons were really cool. I felt like that this, very varied. It was the first Silent Hill game that I felt like it put an emphasis on every single weapon. So, for example, when you get the pipe in this game, instead of you using it as a long weapon, you're using it almost like a spear. You jab them back because it's a long weapon. Whereas later on, you get something like the katana, and the katana is a short weapon, but the pipe will stun an enemy. A katana can deal a lot of damage fast up close. So it's sort of like, yes, it's a new melee weapon, but that doesn't mean it's going to be better than the previous one. It just has a different use. So I felt like that by the time you get to the end, you've got all these different weapons. It wasn't, say, like in Silent Hill 2, where I nearly finished the game and I had nothing but shotgun shells everywhere, and I was just like, thank God I've just been using the handgun, and now in this final boss, I'm just going to use the shotgun ammo because I've been holding this forever. This time around, it felt like it was a nice all-round use of these different weapons, because you weren't just using them to kill monsters, you were using them to push back, because this is a hard-ass game. This game is probably like the hardest one in the entire franchise, in my opinion. There is, I can think of one other thing in a future game that's probably a bit harder, but the way monsters are dealt with in this game, it's something that I don't like in other games. The idea of like quantity over quality. You know, they throw a shit ton of monsters in one room, and you think, oh, they're just doing this to make it harder. But the way they do it, I can allow, because it's sort of like, yeah, they're throwing a horde of monsters at you because they don't want you to fight them. They want you to fucking run. It's not taking the approach where it's like, this is going to be a slightly harder area, so let's put one of each type of monster into this room and see what happens. It is just, if you see a lot of monsters, fucking run. So I think that's good. The puzzles were great as well, actually. Hard Mode is...
Between... Yeah, I was going to...
Go on.
Oh, the connection's really bad. Sorry if you listen to this at the moment, because the connection, it's
okay.
We're on Discord at the moment, so obviously it's a bit behind. So sometimes Scott will cut out, maybe I'll cut out, and then there'd be a bit of misunderstanding. Obviously, it'd be better if we were together, but obviously because of lockdown in Wales, we can't actually at the moment. So I was just going to say, I think, was there a block button added? A block button?
There was as well. I nearly forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, between the second and third one, I think there was a block button added, so there's obviously a bit more like strategy added in, a little bit more than the second one anyway. Because I think in the second one, all you did was just hit until the enemy drops down, pretty much most of the time.
James just doing the rave with a pole. Like,
but yeah, if you're into the second game. And you haven't gotten around to the third for some reason, I'd say give it a shot. The gameplay isn't massively different. It's a little bit harder, like Scott says, but it's not worse in any way. And I think adds a few elements as well.
To reiterate that, Silent Hill 3 is definitely the hardest game in the franchise.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's difficult, and I can't really explain what I mean by that. It's as difficult as Silent Hill 2, but the way the game structure, it makes you think more about what you're doing in the environment. It's harder in the sense that there's more things to learn in this game than there are in the previous ones. Silent Hill 2 was, if you weren't attacking enemies, you could almost see it as an adventure game. Silent Hill 3 is survival horror in the sense that it's almost like each time whenever you encounter a monster, you have to go through a series of options in your mind before you do anything with that monster. Do you attack it? Okay, if you attack it, do you attack it with a long-range weapon? Do you attack it with a ranged weapon at all? Do you attack it with a melee weapon? Do you attack it with a long melee weapon, a short melee weapon? Do you attack it from the front or the back? Do you there's so many questions you have to ask yourself when you're encountering just one monster in this game that it doesn't. When you learn it, it becomes a fairly quick and easy process of doing it, but it's that initial learning curve when you're getting into it, and that's why I think that this is like Silent Hill at its best.
Yeah, I think it builds on two, but not by loads, which I actually quite prefer. I don't want it to be too different. I think if you're playing both of these games, obviously they put these two games in the HD collection because they're very interlocked. They were made quite close together in production. So, but there's a few other things that they've added, a few like quirky things like the bulletproof vest, which it makes you slower. I actually didn't find this. I remember having the bulletproof vest on for like, most of the game, forgetting why I was going so slow, and then I took it off and I was like, oh wait, this is why I've been literally hindering myself for most of the game. But yeah, it allows you to take more hits if you're like a person who takes a lot of hits. But if you're like good at like dodging, then take it off and you'll be faster. Like you said, there's a variety of different weapons. There's also the item called beef jerky, which can be used to lure the double-headed canine enemies away. So that's quite tactical.
Fuck them
as well.
So much.
They're very, very fast, but
they are the worst.
They are
the worst enemies in this entire game. Like
you've always got to.
They come in packs of threes, and they're always in a hallway.
Yeah, always. You've got to keep moving, otherwise you'll get tagged by them a lot. So yeah,
so much damage from them.
Settings. I think there's a variety. There's you start off with outside of Silent Hill, obviously for half the game. You make your way towards it, so that's sort of like a change of pace between the games, the first three games. So the outside areas are the mall, the subway, the underpass, which is the sewer, the construction site, the Hilltop Centre, which is the office building, and the last one, which is the Daisy Villa Apartments, which is where your dad is found. Obviously, in Silent Hill, you've got the Jack's Inn, which you get to at the start. Then you move on to Brookhaven Hospital, and then Lakeside Amusement Park, and then the chapel. So yeah, the subway. Well, I'll give you like one example. The subway gives me a lot of anxiety. I think I mentioned it before with the American Werewolf in London, sort of like example or like comparison. It's the sounds in there, the growling, the sort of like desolate, empty spaces that you find yourself in there. What settings do you like the most?
So oddly enough, the Silent Hill setting itself is probably my least favorite area in the entire game, because they took the idea of Silent Hill from Silent Hill 2, but because they just want you to go from A to B in this one, they don't want you to explore. They just want you to get from A to B. The fog is so thick that it's actually like it's not nice to look at. I really like the cathedral-esque setting at the end. I feel like that it felt like the perfect accumulation of Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3,
Definitely.
like all heading back to where this began, and not just in the sense of like this underground tunnel somewhere, but the church where it all began. And I'm a sucker for Gothic settings as well, and adding that with the overall Silent Hill-ness of the place is really fun. With that being said, though, the apartment complex is batshit scary, the same as Silent Hill 2. So I think the apartment complex is where the knock happened as well, actually. So I quite like that.
And then I think we've got two more things to go through. One is your favourite thing, essentially. I don't know if I might have told you this, but the Facebook group that I joined, did I tell you?
No, I don't think you have.
Anyway, I went in there, it's a group, and I asked the question, what is the one thing from Silent Hill 3 you love the most and why? There we go. Responses varied from small moments like the mirror room, which was very creepy. It's a whole level sections, actually, like the office building section. I saw someone say. Someone else said particularly a reference to Session 9 as well. I think is that a film, I think. And others mentioned symbolism and certain motifs as well. What would your favourite moment be from Silent Hill 3? Anything in particular that stands out to you?
So the mirror scenes always going to stand out to me, only because that was such a if you were playing this game blind and you didn't know what to expect, you walk into that room and then it's just fucked.
It was the exact same for me. I just died in it.
It's just I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's happening, and it just get worse and worse and worse. It was so. Bleh. But yeah, that's probably the thing that stood out most to me. That was like the perfect accumulation. I mean, a puzzle where you're going around looking at the like the numbers on the bodies and doing that. That was quite fun as well. But yeah, the mirror scene definitely. That's the thing that stood out most.
There was also the happy birthday scene. I think someone else mentioned that was very out of place and very creepy, and was like, where's this coming from? Essentially, that I think is it in the hospital? I think Brookhaven Hospital. There was someone else mentioned that, and then there was a lot of other things as well. It got a lot of interaction. Mine was when you're in the subway. Again, the subway. I hate that place. The subway ghost, in particular, I think it's very creepy. You only actually encounter it by chance, pretty much. You have to read a newspaper clipping and a magazine. I think the newspaper goes on about a man being decapitated on the tracks of the same subway, with witnesses saying he was inebriated as well, so drunk. So you get a feeling he committed suicide. Well, actually, I think they said he wasn't drunk. So you get a feeling he actually committed suicide. The magazine's on the occult, talking about the souls of people dying by suicide or accident, not realizing they're dead. So, very Haunting of Bly Manor-esque, I guess, if you've seen that series. So it goes on about being careful.
The screw.
It goes on about being careful when approaching these locations. So when you go to that, when you go to like a certain train track, you enter a cutscene where the perspective changes to first person. So you see this, you hear breathing, heavy breathing, which is very creepy, considering the protagonist is like a 17-year-old girl. But yeah, it is the soul of the man.
It's almost like testing the waters for Silent Hill 4 in that scenario.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that happens in that game, it's almost like the precursor, dipping the water a bit into that.
And he watches Heather breathing heavily, like I say, and then he pushes her off the track when a train approaches as well. So it's a very, very well done scene, I think, and it's very hidden as well, I guess. So that's one that stands out for me.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously others. It's even more there's others that stand out to me as well, the happy birthday scene, like I say, the mirror, and there's a church bit as well. I think you're in the other world, and then you hear a giggling or something, and then you see footprints on the floor. Yeah. Got me as well, that one. And then the ending. We'll finish on the ending. Do you want to walk us through the ending? I guess starting from the boss fight at the end.
It was a bit fucked. I mean, Claudia decides, after Heather decides to take some birth control, hey, this looks a bit yummy. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Eats up the fetus of supposedly God, and then becomes a weird monster thing. And then they have a little bit of a one-on-one, fisticuffs, only for you to actually end up fighting God itself, or a weird it got very fucked up. It made more sense than Silent Hill 1, but then they went, hey, God is a reptile type thing. And it's oh, okay, we're doing this now. And then, Heather, decks him in. And then, yeah, I've avenged my daddy-o. She like has a bit of a moment, drops to the floor, and then goes, "Ah, I forgot my dad was dead, wasn't he? Ah, shucks." Only to get up and then just walk walk away, and it's weird because then the timeline just sort of goes, okay, I guess she leaves. And then it cuts to like one of the endings. It's sort of like she's done, she mourns, and then she goes, okay, like she looks back as if she's about to do something, and then it just cuts to one of the endings.
The normal end. There's actually only really 2 endings, I think. Well, technically, I think
there's 3. There's a UFO ending,
UFO.
But
bit of a joke one,
which is really fucking weird because that comes out of nowhere if you're not even looking for it.
So yeah, I'd say the normal ending, the first ending, is the canon ending. I think it's the only ending you can get as well.
It is.
When the first time you're playing.
It's yeah, definitely.
So that first time playing will always be the same ending, unlike Silent Hill 2, where there's so many different endings you can.
It's like a good 5 or so you can get on your first try.
Yeah, James's ending is a lot less, like, there's a lot less closure, I guess, than Heather's, I guess.
It's more open. There doesn't seem to be a canonical ending to that, but the normal ending in Silent Hill 3 is canonical because I think that Douglas needs to survive for the events of Silent Hill Homecoming to happen.
Right. So Heather / Cheryl, as we find out, visits
She just
Harry's...
changes the name back.
I think she actually does because I think it's somewhere at the end. Yeah.
She tells Douglas, call me Cheryl.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, that's sure. I mean, Heather wasn't really like a negative connotation towards you or anything like that, so that's a bit odd. But okay, we'll call you Cheryl. Why not?
Yeah, you visit Harry's grave at the end, so there's closure there for her. She obviously buries her father, and that's obviously closure for the first and third games as well. It ends in sort of like trilogy, I guess, but the second one's just like its own story.
Like you can see the second one as like involved in the trilogy, but you do have to include Birth of Wish in there. Yeah. Because then if you include the events of Birth of the Wish into Silent Hill 2, and then you have a look at Silent Hill's story overall, the cult do have some form of involvement in that game. Although it's very background, it's not as heavy as it was in Silent Hill 1 and 2, 1 and 3 rather, and you wouldn't really know it. So it does feel like more of an afterthought with that. But there are definitely references in there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think
I think that like in...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that if you include like thematically, it does make sense as an ending to a trilogy. It's sort of like it takes the horror elements from Silent Hill 1 and story beats from 2 and melts them together to make this accumulative final product of 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the original Team Silent wanted it this way as well. I think for the 4th game, I think it was all split up, Team Silent, so I think they saw this one as a cut-off for the first 3, and then the 4th one sort of like, I guess it's just like a new idea sort of thing. The cult's been dealt with. There's no more cult anymore, is there? And Harry and Heather's stories are just over with, so...
Yeah, the 4th one sort of... basically, they state that Silent Hill is, like, it's still a thing, it's still got its weird powers, and it's still doing its weird thing, but... it's now like a wild card. It's not picking and choosing. It's more like whoever's in the vicinity. And 4 is an example of a story that happens when someone's just in there. In fact, was it James's dad is in Silent Hill 4 from what I remember? So there is some crossover there.
Yeah, you do. I think he's either mentioned or you actually see him or something like that.
I think he shows up at like the doorstep, like through the eye hole.
Yeah, I think that is part of that. So I think this ending sort of signifies the end of Team Silent in a way, I guess you could say. What'd you say?
Yeah. And Silent Hill 4 was sort of like the complete wrap up. So like tying up loose ends. Just like, okay, this is all. Yeah.
There's also
so
good ideas.
I do think that. Yeah. I do like Silent Hill 4 more than most. That's a story for another time though. But I do quite like Silent Hill 4, as its own little thing. It definitely isn't the same beast as 1 through 3, but it holds up as its own take of that in a different light.
Definitely. So I think that's a good thing to end on. For next episode, I don't think we've talked about it yet, but would you think horror or a different sort of genre of a game? What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
I'm not sure. I feel like that. We'll
Maybe get
see.
like a
We'll
Halloween
see.
episode if we can.
That would be good, actually. If we, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, thank you very much for listening to the Co-op Chat podcast. My name's been Jordan Adams. This has been Scott Robertson, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time in the third episode. So, possibly Halloween. So we'll see you then. Cheers.